So the Chiefs are definitely about to throw some unexpected curveballs our way here very soon. A somewhat surprising player has the possibility of being traded, for example, and there's also a couple of cut candidates that would make sense, but might upset some within Chiefs Kingdom. So I'll talk about that, an argument for Carnell Tate over Ruben Bain Jr. at pick 9, the latest on the idea of trading or keeping Trent McDuffie, and more interesting topics that you don't want to miss out on in today's quick hitter convo with Seth Kaiser. So let's get into it. But first, how about those? All right, Seth, the NFL Combine's here. We've heard from Brett Veach. They've made a couple of moves. You restructured Mahomes. Mike Dana is now out of here, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible, even though it didn't sound like it. But they moved on from him. Wish him the best, and they saved $9 million there. You're a couple million over the cap. Jawaan Taylor is probably the next move. But here's a question for you, because you did say on your series, if I were Brett Veach, series of moves that the Chiefs would make, that you would cut Jawaan Taylor. But I heard this talked about with the KCSN lab guys, the KC lab guys. The tackle market's not great. So what if the Chiefs were able to flip Taylor for a late round pick, kind of like they did Tooney, for a team that just doesn't want Jawaan Taylor to hit the market and really needs a tackle? Could that be a possibility in your eyes? And then the follow-up to that is Jalen Moore just the right tackle in your eyes right now for 2026?
I think he is, yeah. I mean, his cap hit is significantly lower than Taylor's. The interesting thing to me with both of them is that in theory, you could at least talk to their camp about what they think about an extension. I think Chiefs fans would be kind of frustrated to see that with Taylor because of the penalty stuff.
Yeah.
But he's generally a good pass protecting right tackle. His teammates love him. He's good in the locker room. He knows the system, et cetera, even though those are all like the system part drives people crazy these days, which I get and drives me crazy. The thing with him and Moore is they both, are on kind of like the last year of their deal. And that's usually a time that if you're interested in extending someone, you do it. Because the tackle market's so rough though, you might end up kind of overpaying either one of them because they know that they're set to make a good chunk of money this year. So they're not really in a position to sign a super team friendly deal. They can't keep both of them. And no. Taylor, I mean, you just saved $20 million off the cap. That's easily the biggest chunk they can save here. And yeah, if you can flip him, I mean, that accomplishes the same thing. You kind of want to do right by a player, that's been around and has really helped contribute to a couple of Super Bowls and all that fun stuff. But it is what it is.
I think of the Joe Tooney situation. You were able to get a 4th round pick. I don't know that you get that out of Jawaan Taylor, but the Bears needed some interior line help. There could be a team that needs some help, and they're like, hey, Jawaan Taylor, if he hits the market, would be one of the better available right tackles. Do you want a 5th or a 6th for him? I mean, a future pick, we'll see. But that was just an intriguing thing that I thought of. It's like, hey, maybe you could wheel and deal him for a later round pick. The next question for you, Travis Kelce, I think he's returning. If I had to put money on it, that's where I'm at with it right now. You mentioned in your article, Noah Gray is a cut candidate, not just for what you save this year, which I think is like $4 million, but what you save next year, which is even more than that, $6 million or so. But here's my question. If you did that, because he played about 50% of the snaps every single year, how are you replacing that in your eyes, and what would you do with the tight end room? Because, yeah, you got Jared Wiley, you've got from Clemson, the UDFA, Jake Brenningstool as well. But They're not really proven guys, where Noah Gray is at least proven that he can execute what the offense wants, even though we might not understand what is going on with Noah Gray sometimes based on how he performed last season.
For me, it comes down to the fact that they've got a big enough sample size to know that Noah Gray can't be their tight end 1. We're pretty sure, relatively sure, and this isn't based on inside information, it's just based on what I'm seeing, that Travis Kelce's coming back. So he's your tight end 1. And the NFL is changing. Tight end 2 needs to be a guy that is a significantly better inline blocker than what Noah Gray has been. He hasn't developed that well as an inline blocker, and he showed that he can't really be Travis Kelce light. To me, if you've got a guy that really can't do what you need from tight end 1 and really can't do what you need from tight end 2, I don't see why you wouldn't just save the money, and you can bring in a guy for a relatively decent price who is just a better blocker, and you're not trying to have him be Travis Kelce light. Look for a Blake Bell type. Look for I think they've missed Blake Bell in terms of having someone who's a genuinely good blocker and will catch what's thrown to him and run the scheme, even though he's not like getting open on his own. That would be a significant savings. And I just think that what he's done the last year or two isn't that difficult to replace.
And before I get to the rest of this convo with Seth, I know the football season might be over. Sad, right? But the NFL Combine is happening this week, and believe it or not, you can make picks on individual players 40 times on Underdog, the sponsor of today's video, as well as the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. There's a lot more going on than just the Combine, though. The NBA and NHL seasons are heating up with the playoffs coming soon. UFC has some fights going on this weekend. March Madness is right around the corner, and there's also PGA, esports, and the list goes on. Now is especially a great time to get in on the fun because Underdog recently announced that they are increasing their payouts for Pick 2 and Pick 3 entries forever, offering the best payouts for fantasy picks in the industry. 3.5x on Pick 2s and 6.5x on Pick 3s. Yeah, sounds pretty good to me. To make it even better, be on the lookout for promos such as profit boosts because they add things like that into the app all the time. On top of that, there's a bunch of tournaments you can enter that feature tens of thousands of dollars in prizes. Just make sure to use my code HBTC where any new signup can play just $5 in fantasy entries and get $75 in fantasy bonus entries. Of course, play responsibly and link to play and sign up is in the description and pinned comment down below. And with that, let's get back to it. So Brett Veach spoke at the Combine this week, and he kind of made it seem like, again, this is a lot of smoke and rumor season, all of that, right? But he made it seem like, hey, if they can address the non-premium positions in free agency, that would probably be ideal. Talking safety, running back, linebacker, which we could talk about Drew Tranquil and Leo Chanel in a second. We did a little bit our last interview as well, but he made it seem like if there was a more premium position available at pick 9, that's where he would go. Now, what I also heard him say on an interview with Mitch Holthus and Matt McMullen was that he thinks there's depth at the D-line and wide receiver positions in this year's draft. So it does make me wonder if you double dip at D-line maybe and you do get a wide receiver earlier, sooner rather than later, I guess, in the draft because of Rashee Rice a little bit, but then there's no future in the wide receiver room after 2026, only Worthy and Royals under contract. Where are you kind of at with that premium position? In my eyes, if you say, hey, we're going to skimp on the running back position and hope Jeremiah Love's there at 9, that just feels like a bad process of how you got to Jeremiah Love, if he would even be there.
I don't love that as a process either. Like you said, you've got premium positions and you've got non-premium positions, and it's generally best to address non-premium positions in free agency if you can, and premium positions in the draft if you can. And the running back position is in this weird flux where the last 2 years it's gained more importance schematically in the league, in a league that's getting increasingly lighter and increasingly better at defending the pass. But running back salaries, while they're starting to go back up again, they haven't swung, I think, the way they're going to in the next year or two. So you've got a chance to take advantage of a market inefficiency, and that's a great reason to address it in free agency. You know, you can get a really good running back for half the price that you can get a good wide receiver. That's a market inefficiency and something to take advantage of, especially if they're going to really be focused on getting more explosives, which is something Brett Veach talked about a lot, getting more explosive in the running game. I think that's why there's so much smoke with Travis Etienne. With that in mind, you're not going to get a blue chip, absent luck, you're not going to get a blue chip wide receiver or defensive lineman in free agency because you pay $30 million for that. And you're not going to get them second, third, fourth round because they go in the top half of the draft. That's just how that works. And so for me, I would much rather they go that route in terms of kind of addressing the positions that you don't have to break the bank to get competent players in free agency, and then really look to add blue chip talent. They're in a weird position, just on a side note, that they really do need to add some depth, but they also desperately need a blue chip player or two to be kind of like a foundational guy in the roster. Let's
say you're at pick 9. Both of the top tackles are off the board by then. Both of the defensive linemen are off the board by then. David Bailey, Reuben Bain Jr. Brett Veach did mention, hey, yes, while we do try to get non-premium positions handled outside of early in the draft because it's easier to do in free agency, some of the best players in this year's draft, out of all of them, are non-premium positions. So he mentioned Sonny Styles. He mentioned, of course, Jeremiah Love. And then he mentioned Caleb Downs. Let's just say those 3 were available there, but you didn't have D linemen, you didn't have tackles. Like, what are you doing? Are you trading back? Are you instead saying, no, I saw a mock draft yesterday, all those guys are off the board, but they went with Carnell Tate. Is that kind of where you would go if that's how the board fell? Are you trading back?
If Tate's on the board and Bain isn't, I think no matter who else is there, I'd probably take Tate. And I could consider taking him over Bain too. I've had a chance to look at his film a little bit now. I really like Tate's film. I think he's a plug and play X wide receiver who can beat man coverage, is really solid in zone as well, but he can do the contested catch stuff. He's got a little bit of size. He's got speed. I think he is a blue chip prospect at wide receiver, not maybe like an insanely high level prospect of receiver like we've seen in a few years, but he's a blue chip prospect at receiver. So if the board fell that way, I'd go Tate, because I think it's a premium, it's a blue chip player at a premium position, and you are not going to be in a position to do that in future years, hopefully, unless something goes terribly wrong this year.
That pick is around $32 million. That is so cheap if you could get a quality wide receiver or pass rusher, which is why I think, hey, Ruben Bain, I'm all for it if Veach or whoever Spags isn't worried about the arm length stuff, which we talked about last time. What about, have you looked at Mekhi Lemon at all? And I'm only asking because he's kind of he could be really, if they're not that high on Jalen Royals, life after Rashee Rice. 5'11", 200 pounds. Again, the combine's this week, so we might get more official numbers. But he's somewhere right around there, and I saw you retweet something recently about his yard per route run and some of the other guys in that list, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you like Mekhi Lemon if he was available as well? But like, where would you kind of go with that between the two players, different skill sets?
I'm a couple games into his tape, and I know people are concerned about, what he'll do off the line and whether he can be an X guy, and that matters because let's say, Rashee Rice doesn't play another down for the Chiefs. Again, that's not reporting. I'm not a reporter. I'm saying dudes being civilly sued. The NFL takes that stuff into consideration. Although the NFL is generally pretty hesitant to act based solely on civil suits, but they do their own investigations, and I think they might make an example out of him. And I'm not saying that it's maybe not earned. So you got to look at it that way. But even let's say if he is gone, Xavier Worthy has shown he's a guy that can do some downfield stuff, but he's probably at his best from the slot, even going downfield, even running some of those intermediate routes that I would love for them to run more with him. But Lemon is a guy that might be best primarily from the slot as well. I don't care about his height, generally speaking, because of his style of play. He's got great ball skills and he's really physical. Everyone's like, there's no way he's actually 5'11". That's what he's listed at. But let's say he comes in at, 5'9", 190 pounds, 195 pounds. That's a very different build than, 5'11" and 170 pounds like Xavier Worthy. He's built more like, and this is only for purposes of comparing build, not play styles.
Tyreek.
Yeah, he's built more like Tyreek than he is Worthy or, Hollywood Brown. So, and he has great hands, strong hands, great ball skills. He plays really physically at the catch point. So I like him as a player so far with what I'm seeing. I'm sifting through that right now. I don't know yet if I'm quite as high on him as I am on Tate. I'm kind of back and forth with those two. So, that's a route that I could see them going that I do think people would be upset about because of the measurements, but the play style is different. Very different style of player. But he does still have that explosive athleticism too. And his play style isn't the same as Worthy's, so I don't see it as them overlapping skill set necessarily.
The Chiefs were dead last in EPA on RPO runs last year and bottom 5 in yards per carry. Yet they tried them more than any team in football, says Sam McDowell of the KC Star.
Sounds like good process.
So if they upgrade the running back room, they've upgraded the coaches, and they slightly adjust the scheme. Is that enough? Like, I just don't think he already said there's no wholesale changes coming. Yeah. But if they go a little bit more under center, is that enough in your eyes? And then I do want to pivot to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, it's so early, we don't know exactly what they are going to do, but I'm just expecting 10%, 15% change, maybe, in Andy's scheme. Wrinkles added, and then they try to get that more dynamic playmaker in the backfield. Does that at least make you excited in the sense of you went from one of the worst running back rooms in football from an explosive run standpoint to hopefully getting somebody, whether it's ETN, whoever, that can help you get that explosive run game just jump started and sparks flying in that offense, because Brett Veach said, if you get an explosive run game, that'll take pressure off of everybody, including Patrick Mahomes, and it'll help the pass game.
It absolutely will. Some of the stuff that was a problem with the run game wasn't just scheme, and it wasn't just Hunt or Pacheco. There were some issues there. That's one reason they need one better blocking inline tight end. That's one of the things. Their execution wasn't always great. The attention to detail wasn't always great. I do think the idea is that if you coach up better execution, which frankly, I think I've seen people say this and I really agree with it. I think some of the wholesale changes at coach are more directed at improving execution of the scheme, not necessarily Andy saying, oh, the scheme needs to change. So let's say that does result in that the receivers, the runners, and the blockers, they all execute the scheme 10% better. Yeah, that'll help. Definitely. Do I think it's enough when I see the way teams are defending their RPOs? No, I don't. Andy even mentioned that people weren't really respecting their play action looks or their RPO looks. And I'm curious if he thinks that's purely a talent / execution issue, and that if they execute it better, teams will have to respect it better. I'm more of the opinion that teams have really wised up to the fact that RPO means pass with the Chiefs the vast majority of the time. So I do think that could be enough. You do 5 to 10% more under center stuff or just pure run game rather than at pure RPO. If Bieniemy can convince Reed to do it 5 to 10% more of the time, and you execute it 5 to 10% better, and you've got Kenneth Walker or Travis Etienne back there, yes, that could make the run game significantly better, and everything could probably flow a little more decently from that.
I saw you said, hey, Drew Tranquill might be the next piece that needs to go. You save $6 million, but that's because you have Bossa waiting, and then probably should consider bringing back Leo Chanel because he's just a more unique guy and how he's used in the defense against the run and some other ways. I did see a comment that said, in response to you saying that, hey, how do you know that Jeffrey Bossa is going to be capable of filling that role?
Oh, I don't.
So when we're talking about making these moves, it's like, do you think the risk of cutting Drew Tranquill to save $6 million is worth the potential of just losing out on Leo Chanel? Like, if you don't make that move, is that, or can you can make it all work? You could get out of Nick Bolton's contract technically next year. Bossa would have another year in the system by then. Drew Tranquill's not playing bad football. How would you kind of go about that one?
It's a risk, and it's a risk that's made riskier with more unknown because they refuse to play Bossa any sort of significant snaps, or Bossa, sorry, down the stretch last year, even when the season was over. Drew Tranquill was playing like heavy percentages of snaps, even the final game of the year. Like it was an absolutely ridiculous process, like just ridiculous. And it didn't benefit anyone. It annoys me very much. And maybe it's because Boss is so bad, just unplayable. He didn't look like that in the flashes we saw, but what does it matter? Like, no one cares whether you win or lose. The defense, none of it mattered at that point. You got to see what you have so you can have enough information to make an informed decision. I don't think the Chiefs will have a way of knowing, but they should have a good amount of information on it. And unless they think Bossa just can't play, I think you kind of have to move on in that sense, because I don't think you can. I think Leo is going to get an okay chunk of change, and I don't think you can pay 2 linebackers an okay chunk of change and the third linebacker a top 5, top 6 contract. And so, to me, when they signed Nick Bolton to a fairly lucrative, very lucrative extension, and drafted Bossa, they made this plan a year ago. And now you just follow through with it. It is a risk for sure, but that's the risk that you take the minute you give Nick Bolton a top 5-ish linebacker contract. Maybe Tranquill would be willing to do an extension to bump some of that down the road, but now you've got 3 relatively expensive linebackers. That's a lot of money to invest in a non-premium position.
Let's talk Trent McDuffie, because my question is, and I think you're pro keep him, but my question is, what is his asking price? What do they want? You're saying, hey, let's try to get this extension done and keep him around, and I could definitely see the argument for it because of how talented he is. Mm-hmm. Where would you, like, if the announcement came out that they're extending him and it's $30 million a year, would that surprise you? Or is that, you can make it work given the fact that in theory, if you wanted, you could get out of Chris Jones's contract next year and you'll be looking at just a different style of defense over time if you're not building everything around the CEO of Sack Nation.
I would be kind of surprised to see a $30 million a year extension announced, simply because I feel like if that's the direction they were going, it would have been done by now. And I'm trying to remember what the top of the market is right now in the cornerback.
30.1 or 30 and a half. It's Sauce Gardner.
I think the hang up right now is whether or not to do the top of the market and what the structure looks like. I'm sure that's what CAA is his agency is asking for. He's a much more decorated playoff performer than any of the guys that have been extended recently. The problem for McDuffie, in my opinion, he's an elite player. He is not an elite boundary corner. He's a really, I think people have kind of swung around to, he's an above average boundary corner. No, he's a really good boundary corner, but he's not like, he's not a top 3 boundary corner. He's a top 2 slot defender and maybe a top 8 boundary corner. That's still an awesome player. That's a foundational guy, but that makes it a little tougher because you can't ask him to do everything that Surtain can do. Even like 2023 L'Jarius Sneed, you can't quite ask him to do everything L'Jarius Sneed did in quite the same way and still get maximum return from him. So I am pro keeping him because the Chiefs only have him and Jones as blue chip players on the defensive side of the football right now. People will say, well, you trade them away to get picks. They have so many holes to fill. Well, if you've got a lot of holes to fill, creating another hole is not a great place to start. It's like, well, then you can keep Jalen Watson. Well, they've already kind of made their bed with Christian Fulton, who looked like he could play down the stretch last year. Noah Williams, he's a pure boundary guy. Noah Williams is a pure boundary guy. Those are probably your 2 boundary corners this next year. Okay, are they going to play Chris Roland Wallace in the slot? Are they going to... McDuffie is such a great fit for what Spags likes from the slot. That's one reason what they did with him last year makes it so maddening. But I'm pro keeping him, and I would at least see if you can figure out a way to have him, touch the top of the market, but maybe not quite break through it the way it would if it were like a Stingley or Surtain or some of these other guys who can do a couple of things that he can't quite do.
Somebody recently shared a quote about McDuffie saying, hey, I'll play wherever they want me to play. He excels in the slot, but in 2025, he played 19% of snaps in the slot. In 2024, he played 12% of snaps in the slot. So he's barely playing where he is the best. So I'll just be curious to see if they get that long-term deal done, will we see him more at the position he excels at, even though he can move all around. And that's part of probably his agent's argument of, look, he can play here, he can play there. Some of these other corners cannot do that. So I'll be very curious to see how it all plays out. Seth, thanks so much for your time. I know you got to get some stuff handled as a lawyer. You got work today. So I appreciate you. Make sure to sub to Seth's Substack. He's breaking down articles, or he's dropping articles every single week, multiple. You'll have a bunch of stuff coming up with free agency, more studying on draft crushes and guys that the Chiefs could potentially draft. So I'm looking forward to that and appreciate your time as always.
Hey, I appreciate you having me as ever, even as I look around at everything else.